Hello everyone, my name is Gina from McGuire and I'm glad you're here today. So in my last video, I showed a trapped inking technique that can be done with any stamps you have on hand. Well, today I'm focusing on using that technique along with stencils. It's really easy and allows you to get a lot more from your stencils and get really cool, colorful, layered backgrounds. Now, if you haven't watched the other video, it's up here on the top right and you can check that out first. But let's get started with this example. This is a slimline card, very smooth, so there's not much dimension to it, and that's thanks to using the trapped inking technique with a stencil. Okay, for this I used a single stencil. This is the new Simon Says stamp Slimline Floral Border Stencil. It's long enough that it'll fit along a slimline card, but it could definitely be used on a smaller card too. I have a piece of cardstock here that is 8.5 inches wide, so it'll be perfect for a slimline. For this particular card, I want to start with the mask for the stencil. This is a very easy mask. I'm just cutting a large piece of masking paper and then putting the stencil on top of it. I'm quickly applying any ink here, just quickly, not worrying much about it, just so I can see where the images are. And this is going directly onto some masking paper. You could use typing paper if you prefer and tape it down later. Now I'm cutting between the flowers themselves and their stems. So above this cut line will be all the flower tops, all the flower petals, and below the cut line will be the stems, leaves, and grass. This will allow me to quickly and easily ink up the bottom part in green, and then also ink up the flower tops in different colors. You can see I'm not doing taking much care here to make it perfect. Don't need that. You just need a quick mask. You could instead use little pieces of tape to mask each off, but this was easier and I could make multiple cards too. Okay, so now I have cleaned off my stencil and I'm putting it onto a piece of cardstock that's just white cardstock, 8.5 inches wide. I'm putting the top half of the mask on. So this is covering all of the flower tops of the stencil. The only thing exposed will be the leaves, stems, and grass. I'm applying Tim Holtz Distress Oxide ink in Twisted Citron color. You could use absolutely any inks you want here. I then added a little darker green using pine needles. So you can see I did that very quickly. I'm not taking much effort to blend it. It doesn't really matter. I then use my cloth to really clean off the stencil. Then we can remove our mask and you'll see that we have our leaves and stems and grass inked and ready to go. But let's next do the flower tops. So I'm taking the bottom portion of our mask, putting that over the stencil to cover up all that green inking we just did. The only thing exposed are the flower tops. I'm using Altenew detailed blending brushes to apply some Gina ink to these, and I'm doing a few different colors. I'm using a mix of inks because it really doesn't matter what you use here. Any dye ink, pigment ink, hybrid ink, oxide ink, distress ink, they'll all work. You just want to apply color to the openings. As for a type of inking tool to use for this technique, you can use whatever you have. I have quite a few different inking tools because I make so many cards for my job, but it's really not necessary. I do recommend a larger inking tool and a small one like this if you do a lot of inking, but really you can make do with whatever you have. Once I'm done inking, I can remove the mask and wipe it clean with a dry cloth. There you can see the beautiful results so far. Now, I want to add clear heat embossing over this, but before I do so, I want to make sure my stencil is very clean and use anti-static powder tool. We want the clear embossing only to be on the colored areas and not the white background. So using a static tool is very helpful to keep our heat embossing tidy. Okay, now I have the stencil back over our image still lined up. And I'm using VersaMark Ink and an ink blending tool from Tim Holtz and pressing VersaMark Ink into the openings. You want to be very generous with VersaMark Ink. And I usually use a Tim Holtz ink blending tool for VersaMark. I just feel like it holds up really well and allows you to put a lot down at once. So that clear, sticky ink will allow us to add clear embossing powder. I removed the stencil, added clear embossing powder, and that clear embossing powder will only stick where you put that VersaMark ink. So we're basically trapping the color under the embossing powder. This is such a fun resist technique, and now we can add color on top, and the embossing powder will resist it. I have taken the stencil and rotated it so that the cloud edge is up right above the flowers on our background. That's the cool thing about this stencil. It's only one stencil, but it has a cloud border and a floral border. I am now applying Distress Oxide ink in a tumbled glass and broken china. I'm not putting too much down because I want this to be a soft blue sky. And you can see the stencil is creating that white cloud towards the top. Now you could go very heavy on ink here, and you could use any dye or pigment ink or distress ink or oxide ink you want here. But I wanted to go for a soft blue sky. It would have required colorful embossing powder to do those colorful flowers on blue cardstock. So this is a great trick. I also felt my white clouds were a little too harsh, so I'm putting a tiny bit of the blue ink up over the clouds, so they're just a little bit lighter. But I decided at this point that I put too much blue ink down. I wanted it to be a little bit lighter, so here's a trick I like to do. I take white pigment ink, press it onto my work surface, and I pick that up with a blending brush and put that on top. And this will soften the ink that we put down. So this just will give a less of a harsh edge along that cloud line. The reason I press the ink onto my work surface is so that I don't take a dirty brush or a brush that has a little bit of blue ink on it and put it onto the ink pad. Once I'm happy with the results, I'll take a dry cloth and really wipe clean all of the embossed images. That way they'll pop, and the embossing will have resisted that blue ink we put on top, and our flowers will still be bright and colorful. I thought it would also be fun to make the cards sparkle, so I used Tsukineko Shimmer Spritz, and I sprayed that from about 2 feet above onto the project. It really adds a lot of shine in real life. It's kind of hard to see in the video, but it is absolutely beautiful. It doesn't change the color you already have down, it just adds sparkle. I also allowed a few little drips to drop on the background just to add interest with that too. For a sentiment, I'm using the new Simon Says stamp All About You set. I really like the look of these sentiments and the size, and it's a style that works with a variety of cards. So I'm stamping thank you on the top left corner. I'm using my anti-static powder tool first, and I before that made sure that my background was completely dry. I'm stamping it with a black pigment ink, and then I will add clear embossing powder. So far we have the look of a lot of dimension on this card, but it is absolutely smooth. So this technique is great for one layered card. However, I like to add dimension, so I matted it on a darker teal cardstock, and now I'm adding it to a white folded card. I like to start with white folded cards that are 9 inches by 4 inches, and then trim it down. This ended up being about 3.5 by 8.5 inches, and will fit in a traditional slimline envelope. I did add a few little black die cut butterflies, and a few of the Trinity Stamps Something New white pearls. You can see the sparkle in the background and how bright our flowers and grass are, even though we inked over it to create the sky. So this trapped inking technique is great when using stencils too, so you can create a beautiful one-layer background. Okay, my next example uses layering stencils to show you that trapped inking works with those also. This is a great way to create a really colorful background. Now the layering stencil set that I'm using is 2 stencils. They're the Mod Layering Leaves from Simon Says Stamp. I think these are really cool and can be used in so many different ways, but today I'm focusing on the trapped inking. So I have a piece of white cardstock and the first stencil down. Over that stencil, I'm applying Twisted Citron Distress Oxide ink, and again, you can use whatever inks you prefer. After I covered it with the Twisted Citron, I wiped it clean, and then I added a little bit of Mowed Lawn Distress Oxide ink, just towards the top of each of those patterns, just to give it a little depth. You could do multiple colors here. You can do whatever you want. I just wanted to create a background that was blues and greens. Once I'm done with that inking, we can clean our stencil completely, then line it back up with the inking we've already done. I almost forgot to add my anti-static powder tool, so I'm flipping the stencil over, applying a generous amount of the anti-static powder. Now I'm going and adding the VersaMark ink over the openings. Again, I'm using a Tim Holtz ink blending tool because it allows me to get really tough in getting in those little nooks and crannies. You want to cover all of that green with the clear sticky ink. I then can remove the stencil, add clear embossing powder, and heat set. So now that green ink is trapped under the clear embossing, and all the white area around it does not have embossing. Okay, now I can move on to the second stencil and line that up. Over this, I'm applying some blue Distress Oxide inks. This happens to be the Salvage Patina color. That's just gorgeous. After I've covered it with this color, I do come in with a bit of broken china and add a little bit of a darker blue to some areas of the pattern. You could do more contrast if you wanted to, but I wanted the background to be a little softer for my card, but it's totally up to you. Once I'm done, I wipe it very clean with a dry cloth. I'll lift it up, take a look at it, make sure I'm happy with it, use my anti-static powder tool, and then apply a layer of VersaMark ink over this. Now you already have some clear heat embossing exposed here. That's okay. You can put more VersaMark ink on top of it and put another clear layer of embossing. So now I'm putting the clear powder on it, and then we'll heat set this. So everything blue and green will have clear embossing on it. Everything white is just plain cardstock. So now you could do more stenciling over this if you want to, but what I decided to do was just add a little bit of light blue to the background so that white wasn't so much of a contrast. You could do a third color if you want. You could do yellow here, pink, whatever you want. But again, I wanted a softer look. So I'm just applying some Distress ink in the tumbled glass color over the background very lightly. Okay, so once I'm done with that, I can go ahead and wipe it clean with a dry cloth. And if your clear embossing looks a little muted, just reheat set it. It'll make it shiny. Sometimes it dulls the clear embossing when you put ink over it, but if you reheat set it, it'll be fine. One of the things I like about using stencils for backgrounds is it creates a piece that's usually bigger than what you need for a card, so you can cut off the excess and save it for something else. Next, I wanted to show you how I did this sentiment in the center with the vellum background. I'm using the Simon Says stamp Wish I Could Hug You die set. I die cut Wish I Could Hug You twice from white cardstock and glued them together for a stacked look. I then glued that onto a vellum shadow die cut. The shadow die is included with it. Now, I wanted this to stand up from my card, so I cut 2 more Wish I Could Hug You, and I'm going to glue that to the back of the vellum. Now I used my E6000 spray because it's an intricate die cut and makes it faster. And I sprayed this on top of this stacked Wish I Could Hug You that's in my hand. So it's too thick and I'm spraying the adhesive on the top of it. I will then glue that to the back of our vellum. So basically I have 2 Wish I Could Hug You white die cuts, vellum, and then 2 more Wish I Could Hug You white die cuts. So the vellum is sandwiched between and there's dimension behind it. So when I glue it to my card, it'll stand up a bit. The reason I'm doing this is vellum is a great way to make something stand out on your busy background. I wanted this white sentiment to stand out, and by putting that vellum in there, it kind of mutes our busy background a bit. And by putting dimension behind the vellum, it looks even more like it's standing out. So dimension like that really does make a big difference, but you could skip it if you prefer. To finish it off, I added a little blue heart die cut, and then I added some gemstones in the pattern in the background. You can see the shine that we get from the clear embossing, and that colorful background we were able to create by using the trapped inking technique. By the way, if you don't want the clear embossing on the final card, you could always do the iron off technique to remove that shine, and I will link to a video showing that up here in the top right. But for the cards today, I left the clear embossing on it. Okay, I have one more example for you, and this shows how you can take one stencil and double it up to layer it to create a new look using the trapped ink technique. So I have this Simon Says stamp I Like Small Dots stencil. It's a big one, so it would work for Slimline card if you want. I'm taping it onto a piece of white cardstock. Any white cardstock should work. And I'm applying a generous amount of Distress Oxide ink in the Picked Raspberry color. Again, any color, any ink would work here. Once I have covered that area, I will clean off my stencil, use my anti-static powder tool, and then press VersaMark ink over all of the openings. The reason I don't take the VersaMark ink pad directly to this ink surface is I don't want to get any of that colored ink transferring onto my ink pad. So once I've covered the openings with VersaMark ink, I can remove the stencil, add clear embossing powder, and heat set it. This is like we've done many times in this video. I'm now taking the same stencil, it's all clean, and I'm putting it back on top of our background but offset. So you can see how we'll have these overlapping circles. You could instead use a stripe stencil or a smaller dot stencil, anything you want, but I thought using the same one offset would be fun. Here I'm applying Abandoned Coral Distress Oxide ink very generously over the openings. You are going over some of the clear embossing we had before. That's okay. I'll then use a dry cloth to really wipe that clean. When I remove the stencil, you can see we have a fun overlap kind of retro-y looking background. I went for bright colors because I thought the retro-y look would be fun and different for me. Now you could stop here if you wanted to, but what I'm going to do is use my anti-static powder tool once again, line up with that coral stenciling that we just did, so lining it back up with the orange, and then apply the VersaMark ink over that. So I'll end up having pink circles with clear embossing and the coral circles with clear embossing. And they do overlap, and that's okay. So here I've done the VersaMark over the whole thing. I'm adding my clear embossing and heat setting it. Now I know this background is pretty bright. You could definitely do the same thing with lighter colors if you want something a little more subtle. Now remember, all of those areas where white is showing, that's exposed cardstock, so you can apply more ink over this. So I'm putting a little bit of cracked pistachio, a light amount, over the entire background. The clear embossing on the pink and the coral will resist that ink, so only the white areas will turn this new color. It's just a really fun way to use your inks and stencils to create a colorful background with a fun layered kind of geometric look. So I wiped that clean with a dry cloth. You could wipe it a little bit with a wet cloth, but I wouldn't mess around with it too much with any kind of wet, so dry cloth is usually best. I do like to reheat set it just to make sure that the embossing stays nice and shiny. Now, although this is a large background, I did end up trimming it down to be on a mini Slimline note card, which is 3 1/4 by 6 1/4. Now this sentiment is bold and perfect for this background. I love this sentiment. It's the Simon Says stamp, You're the Best die set. So you can see one die cuts the shadow for the word your, and then the outline for the best, and the other one cuts the word your. I created that layered die cut from white cardstock and black glossy cardstock, and thought it'd be fun to add some hearts to the background. I'm using one of my favorite dies, the Simon Says stamp Mini Hearts Party die. It cuts a bunch of hearts from different sizes. I'm gluing a white heart at the center of each of the pink circles. I just thought it'd be fun to add some more shine to this background. So after I glued the white hearts to the center of each pink circle, I glued a holographic heart on top of that. By doing the two stacked, it makes them stand out. And I thought the holographic cardstock was fun to go with this kind of retro-y looking background. So let's look at the completed card. Again, it's about 3 1/4 by 6 1/4 inches, so it fits in a mini Slimline envelope. Look at that shine in the background thanks to the holographic cardstock I used for the hearts. It really makes the card catch the light nicely. You can also see the fun overlapping retro looking background we got by using one stencil and the trapped inking technique. And the You're the Best in white and black really stands out on that too. So it's actually a simple card design, but it has a lot going on thanks to the fun technique. So I hope between this video and my last, you will be inspired to try this trapped inking technique. It's a great way to get new looks from the products you have. Now, if you're interested in what I used today, I do link that below in my YouTube description always. You can also go to my blog, which I recommend. It's up here on the top right, and it has more photos and information, and you can even save projects for future reference. In the middle are a couple other videos to watch. I hope this has been helpful to you and that you have a wonderful day.